can legally drive, what type of vehicle is suitable or what you need as a bare minimum perhaps, and just being sensible, and just all of those things which can enable you to go and explore the countryside in a pretty unique way and a pretty bloody cool way as well, if I don't say so myself. So first of all, what are green lanes? So green lanes are roads that you have a legal right of way to drive on in England and Wales. Scotland is a different bag up there, so we're not going to touch on Scotland today. So we're going to focus on those green lanes that we can drive. And within those, the green lane is more just a colloquial term we use for a byway, which is open to all traffic, or a little acronym of BOAT, and an unclassified county road, so UCR. There's a little distinction between those two, just in terms of who has responsibility of looking after those types of roads and lanes. We know the types of tracks and roads that we're legally allowed to drive on. How do we find out where they are? So the easiest place straight away is to look at some good quality OS maps. So for example, I've got one up on the wall here, and this is just an OS map of my local area where I've sort of marked out some of the green lanes that we can drive and some that we've been on. We've kind of got a particular grading system that we use ourselves. As I'll show you around the map, and we'll show a few spots. So if we go in, if it's focusing okay, so you can see where we've highlighted some of the tracks, and also if I can find some up here. So on the key here, if you can see here, these ones which have got the cross. So those are the byways. And then the ones which are dots are basically unclassified roads. And this is more Devon specific, but you see lots of signs as you drive around the countryside which say unmetalled roads. So whenever you see that, basically that is a road that you are able to drive in theory. So that's the easiest place to start. And that's pretty decent in terms of knowing where you can and can't drive. Obviously it's not a digital format, and it's not telling you things like you can't drive on a particular one, because there is a thing called a TRO, or a traffic restriction order, which gets applied onto some roads, not just green lanes, but just various roads, which means that road is closed. You are not allowed to go on there. So obviously your OS map is not going to show you that. One of the most beneficial things that you can do is sign up as a member for the Green Lane Association. It's only about 50 quid a year. It's not very much, but what that allows you to do is use their really awesome mapping system called Trailwise. Now, their mapping system has got all of the green lanes, so yeah, byways and UCRs that you can drive in England and Wales, and they're sort of marked on the map so you can see where they are. And then one of the great things about that is it allows for user comments. So particularly some of those more popular green lanes, you'll see there'll be a host of comments, some more recent than others, where people talk about like, hey, I went in my Defender 90 last year, no issues, or someone might put, hey, there's a tree falling across the track. So all of that is useful information, and it's also pretty up to date when it comes to TROs, so knowing if a road is closed. So that's point number one. Another one, if you really want to cover yourself, is you can go and speak to your local highways agency or local council and ask to see some of the maps, and if there are any kind of restrictions on any of those roads, just so you know exactly what you can and can't do. Being realistic, are we going to be doing that each time that we want to go green laning? It depends. I'd say that if you make use of things like the Trailwise mapping tool through the Green Lane Association, that's going to go a long way. So straight away, we've got an idea of what type of roads we are allowed to drive and how to find them and where they are and what they look like on a map. So that's great. Let's go for it. But the next question is my vehicle suitable? So pretty fair to say if you have a 4x4, typically, yes, most green lanes you are. But then as with all things, some green lanes range from a pretty light gravel track, which any car could basically do, to really gnarly, completely undrivable, which even the most jacked up off-road ready 4x4 is going to struggle with. So there's, a bit of like, what tracks can I go on? So for example, in the South Devon area that we're based in, there's actually loads of these tracks and roads that we can drive. I know for a fact that some of them you just can't. They're either just too narrow, something is blocking its way. but you only find out that information by exploring it yourself. And the most sensible way of doing that, if you are doing it yourself, is just to simply go and walk it. So just go to the lane and just walk up and down it, see if that's something which you reckon you could drive. The next thing is, what does my vehicle need, or what should my vehicle have in terms of going out? So if you want to be the most robust, or have the most reliable means to get up, and I don't just mean mechanically reliable, but I mean just a reliable way of actually driving up or down a particular lane, you definitely want a four-wheel drive, and you would like to have low range and some all-terrain tyres. That's going to give you the best combo of driving up those lanes. And I think there's something which we're certainly aware of, or I am myself, and I'd like everyone else to be, is from an environmental perspective, these lanes, some of the fragile ecosystems, driving on them can cause damage. It's kind of stating the obvious, but when you're driving sort of big 2.5, 3 ton machines around them, it can cause damage. And particularly when it's been wet, you can sort of really churn up the ground. So there's an element of a bit of common sense there of how far do you want to push it. And that's why typically when you go greenlaning, and that's why the tours that we do ourselves, we keep those within a certain window of months of the year, because we don't want to be doing that in the depths of winter. Whilst there can be some tracks that can be done, a lot of them are kind of off limits, and not just because you might not be able to drive it, but you're just going to cause more damage than it's worth doing. And that's just something to bear in mind. You know, we have a legal right to drive all of these types of green lanes, but you know, we want to keep it that way, and we keep it that way by not being too stupid or not being too silly. So we understand where we can drive. We can use tools or maps to show us exactly where, and we have an idea of the type of vehicle that we should be having to drive in. So the next thing is, can I go on my own? Like, absolutely, you can go on your own. A question there is that sensible? If these are green lanes or places you don't know, and it's far away from home, you've got to think about things like, what if something does go wrong? Do you have a way of recovering yourself or getting yourself out of that situation? That's where going with other people, whether it be on an organised paid tour that you go on, or just going with friends who've also got 4x4s, is a great safety net to have. So that's what I'd really recommend if you did want to get into 4x4 and you're fairly new to that. Don't go on your own quite yet. I think get a few miles under your belt of driving lanes, getting an idea of driving techniques as well, just sort of basic off-road things. Understand how your vehicle works. Understand the types of line that you should optimally be taking when driving off-road, how momentum works, being considerate of, if you go over there and spin your wheels, that's just going to damage it, whereas if you go a slightly different way or a slightly different approach, you could be, you know, helping yourself there. So all of those things, get some miles under your belt, and that's worth doing with people who've done it before. The greenlaning is great. It allows you to go outside, explore places which you probably wouldn't go otherwise, and it marries those things that we love. The vehicles, all of that tech behind that, going outside in the wilderness, in the countryside, exploring places. It's just meshing those all together in a really interesting and fun way.
From here, if we go into low, and we'll just sort of bumble along.
Transport can definitely do that.
And here is some footage that we've taken on some of our 4x4 trips around the Devon area.
Ooh, a few inches.
I hope you find this video useful and you have a better understanding of how you can get out there and start exploring some of the green lanes. Anyway, until next time guys, over and out.